and except for Lee. Lee? Lee, are you there?
I'm here now.
Okay, excellent. Welcome everyone to Madeira's webinar on choosing colors for your embroidery. My name is Alice Wolf. I'm the Marketing Communications Director for Madeira, and I'm joined today by two special guests. Our goal today is to fine-tune your understanding of color matching, to share some of the intricacies of choosing and working with colors for the best designs, and to let you know that Madeira has recently added 72 new colors to its poly-neon range of 100% polyester embroidery threads. Lee Caroselli-Barnes has graciously joined us to help explain the basics of blending and shading in order to take a design from good to great. Lee is an award-winning designer who started Balboa Threadworks in 1987 with her brother Keith. In the late 80s, when told that blending and shading were impossible in embroidery, they set about proving that concept was wrong and showed it could be done beautifully. Lee has been lecturing, writing trade articles, and teaching her technique since 1989 and offers collections of stock designs that are known for their realism, blended colors, and ease of running. She has various sets of instructional CDs available that you will learn about at the end of the webinar. Sean Randlett has been a customer service representative with Madeira for nearly 5 years and a fine artist for much longer. Many of you attending the webinar may have spoken with Sean on the phone or chatted with her online if you were looking for some technical help or placing an order. Sean works primarily with acrylics and pastels and does internal trainings for the staff at Madeira. Please feel free to type in your questions as we move along. We will answer as many as possible in real time, and we will collect all of your questions, provide answers, and email each of you a complete set of the Q&A before the week is over. Again, at the end of the webinar, we will provide contact information for Lee and how you can learn more from her, and information about a special offer to thank you for attending today. All right, let's begin with mastering color matching. Sean?
Thank you, Alice. Just want to talk a little bit from a customer sales and support perspective. One of the most common calls that come into customer sales and support here at Madeira are requests for assistance with color matching. When we talk about color matching, we're really talking about color evaluation and identification. So I'm going to give you a few considerations that could help you evaluate and match colors better. Very often, embroiderers are asked by their customers to match colors to reproduce designs, mascots, logos for corporations, and they're often asked to do this using a narrow set of very specifically defined colors. Often they're asked to match from one thread manufacturer, perhaps to Madeira thread, or they're matching fabrics for tone-on-tone effects, or they're matching to Pantone or PMS color numbers. Okay? So very often your only option, if you don't have an exact match, is to match by eye. So when you're put in this position, you're going to want to do whatever you can to help yourself match colors as accurately as you possibly can. You want to use the best color matching techniques that are available to you so you can get the closest color match possible to satisfy your customers. So if we look at this first slide over here, here are some things you want to think about. And the very first thing is color source. What are you using to match your colors? What's your source for that? You do want to use actual thread swatches or combs or spools of the actual thread that you want to use. You also want to use fabric swatches or samples if the fabric color is a part of the design and you need to match perhaps tone on tone. You also want to use a Pantone or PMS formula guide if you're matching to a specific Pantone color. The most foolproof way to match colors accurately by eye is to actually use those thread swatches, like a Madeira color card with the thread right on it, or the actual cone or spool of thread. You always want to use that fabric sample. You always want to use that Pantone up-to-date guide if you're using that PMS color to be accurate. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see do not use. You do not want to use a printed ink reproduction of the thread chart from your computer printer. The computer printer is handy, but it's not going to give you a good output for an accurate color match. You also do not want to use images from your computer screen. Your computer screen also is very handy just to get an idea or general idea of the color family that you're using, but the computer screen is very limited from monitor to monitor, and they're all calibrated differently. It's not going to give you that good perception that you need to match the colors well. Okay? It'll skew them from true to life. Another very important consideration that you don't want to neglect is lighting. Lighting is going to dramatically affect the quality of your color perception. Color is going to look a certain way under one lighting and then sometimes completely different under another. So using a consistent light source that's as neutral as possible and as close to natural daylight as possible is strongly recommended. Don't neglect this. This is very important. On the top of the screen you'll see on the right-hand side, do use what is very often called a full spectrum lamp or bulb for color accuracy. You want to look at lamps or bulbs made by reliable full spectrum manufacturers like OttLight, Verilux, or Chromolux, or a few brands that are available at most local art supply outlets or craft or sewing suppliers. They'll come in either full lamps or in bulbs. If you don't have any of those available to you, you might want to try the artist's old-fashioned way that's tried and true for lots of centuries. Find yourself a north light-facing window, get the midday light in a north-facing direction, and that'll give you the most consistent full-spectrum light to look at your colors with if you don't have that technology. On the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, do not use a couple of things there. What we have in most of our homes, light from an incandescent bulb. It's nice, it makes your home cozy, but it's going to make the color you're looking at have a yellow-orange cast to it. So you're not going to get an accurate color representation. Likewise, fluorescent bulbs, modern CFL bulbs that are used everywhere, offices and shops, those can flood your color with kind of a blue or blue-green cast. So you're not going to get an accurate color perception from those bulbs either. Also, just a word about ambient colors. It's also another word for saying surrounding colors. When you're matching color to color, tone on tone, or from one manufacturer to another, you're going to find that isolating the color can be quite helpful. Surrounding colors will often cast a color reflection onto the color you're trying to evaluate to match. So this isolator, this color card that you're kind of seeing in the picture there that have the holes cut out with it will help you to basically make everything else quiet. They're often called a color isolator. They're often called a spot card. Artists use them for color matching. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to cover the other colors so you can just look at that color that you're matching and perhaps that other fabric or thread swatch to get a really true understanding of what those colors look like without the color interference from the surrounding areas.
Sean, one question that came in is on LED light.
LED light is very cold. It will do something very similar to what a CFL or a fluorescent will do. You really want to go for that full spectrum. Look for that. You want to look for that idea, that full spectrum idea that's out there. There are lots of good full spectrum bulbs out there. LEDs just going to be too chilly. Too chilly. In this slide, we're just going to talk about some basic color concepts. That's where all of us start with color. When we're young, we learn red, blue, green, yellow, etc. Color wheel, just back to basics, it's a natural rainbow spectrum bent into a circle. So you've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, like you would see in rainbow spectrum or a prism. Primaries are red, blue, and yellow. And secondaries are mixtures of those, green, orange, purple, and violet. And the tertiaries are those in between, the blue-greens, the red-violets, and the orange-yellows. And once you get mixed with black or white, you're going to get shades or tints, a variety of these different colors. But when we're talking about what we call local color, we're just talking about broad color families. Something is in the red family, something is in the blue family. Okay? So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the chart has analogous colors, a little pie taken out of it there. Analogous colors are colors that lie side by side on the color wheel. You want to use these for subtle blending one into another. So you have the progression of these broad categories like green, lemon yellow, golden yellow, or red, yellow, orange. If you're looking to blend progressively in designs, look for colors that kind of live side by side on the color wheel. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the complements, and those two little pieces of pie are taken out opposite from each other. Complements are the colors that are opposite or are most different from each other. Complements can be a little shocking, but they can also really serve you well. When you place them side by side in design, complementaries will appear to vibrate against each other. They're going to accentuate each other's differences and make it pop. If you want green, for instance, to look as green as possible, put it up against something in the red family, or red tone, and that's going to make that green pop. You want orange to look as hot and vibrant as possible, pair it with a blue, an aqua blue or royal, something like that. Violet's going to make yellow look its yellowest. If you're trying to get a pop of kind of artistic realism, you're putting a shadow in on something that's lemon yellow, you might make that shadow a kind of a violet gray. So you want to use that complement in that shadow. This is an important little thing to look at here. It seems like it's a small thing, but this is the area where I talk to a lot of people calling out on the phone with needing color advice, and that's color temperature. It's a place where lots of confusion comes in, and for many people who have trouble identifying color, they report that they know that two colors of the same family are different, but they don't know why they're different. And most of the time, if this is you, this is because of the temperature of the color. Okay, so it's helpful to understand color as having temperature, especially when you're matching or choosing colors in the design, identifying those colors. It's true that at a very basic level, orange is warmer than blue, but this is very simplistic. What you need to sharpen your ability to see is warmer and cooler colors of the same hue or in the same family. So for instance, if you're looking at this slide, within one local color, for instance the red family, there are warm reds and there are cool reds. And you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got the warmer red on the left-hand side, and you've got the cooler red on the right-hand side. Okay? So the cooler red is going to tend toward the blue end of the spectrum, and the warmer red is going to tend toward the more orange end of the spectrum. It's just hotter to look at. Same thing with the green. Left-hand side, that green cone is a lot warmer than the cone on the right-hand side, and that's bluer. So even within what you would call a cool color like green, you've got the warm greens and you've got the cool greens. So you do want to pay attention to them. Very helpful for you to get a feel and understanding of color temperature. It's going to be helpful, especially when you begin to stitch with some of the warmer tones like grays and browns. You're going to have cool and warm grays, cool and warm browns. It's going to make a big difference. Using the temperature that's wrong, kind of the wrong temperature for a color, can be really jarring in the design. If you don't quite know why that particular shape fits, think about color temperature. So if you can improve your ability to evaluate this as you're making color matching choices and pairing colors, it's going to benefit you to ask yourself, is this a warm gray or is this a cool gray? Is this a warm blue or is this a cool blue?
Thank you, Sean. Now let's take a look at the importance of color blending and shading with Lee. As an embroidery artist like Lee can relate to, painting with thread is a whole different animal than painting with ink or paint. Strands of thread cannot literally be mixed as paint and ink can. They can only be laid side by side, making gradation of color more of a challenge. But there are 4 elements to be considered as you create a design: stitch distance, stitch direction, color choice, and thread type. We will use these elements as the basis of our look at color blending and shading, inviting Lee's comments and sharing illustrations as we go. Lee, would you please address the first element, stitch distance, and how it controls the intensity of your color in Yellow Lab?
When we get into your blending of thread, it's obvious that if we're going to have a blend of 2 colors or a blend of 3 colors, that each one cannot be 100% density. Can you hear me? Am I not being heard? Oh, boy. Can you hear me?
You can't.
I can't hear. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry I was drowned out there, but when we get into mixing your colors or blending your colors, it's obvious that when you have more than one color in one area, that the two colors or three colors cannot be 100% density. Therefore, you're going to have to lighten your density, and as you lighten it, that will lighten the intensity of the color. So the further apart your stitches are in your tatami blend or your fill, the lighter it will appear. What we do as far as building up that density or intensity of color is come in with a second layer or a third layer. In this case, you'll see in the lab that on the warm side of the image, where you see your warm yellows, opposed to the right side where it's cooler with the introduction of your gray, you'll see the full intensity of the yellow of that dog. This means that we have 100% density. This would mean that we have gone over that area more than once, but we are still looking at layering these stitches, going with light density and building the intensity of the color by building our density.
Thank you. Let's take a look at Jack Russell. What can you tell us about stitch direction and how it affects the smooth transition between these colors?
Your stitch direction is equally as important as that density. We've all been taught you cannot put a stitch on top of a stitch. That is true of a low density fill as well as a heavy fill. One stitch cannot be put on top of another. So when you start with these light density fills, you're opening up space for other colors. That second layer then lies between the lines that you've already stitched, and your third layer of color will come in again and will lie between those lines of stitching. This is actually something that is a physics lesson. Your thread or your needle will not put a stitch on top of an existing stitch. It will be deflected to the point of least resistance, and it will put those stitches in between the lines. And when you add color with the light density fill and add layers and additional colors, it will again find the place of least resistance and put your stitches there. So the important thing is to run everything in the same direction. If it's horizontal, which is my choice in most cases, then every part of this part of the object where you expect to do a blend has to go the same direction. If you change that direction slightly, that next layer will stand up on top of the previous layers and will not blend. So everything must go between the lines.
Lee,
When
would
we
you
look
mind reviewing how you change the density of a fill? That's a question that just came in.
We will be looking at the stitch out of the tiger.
Okay.
And also when we do that, we will look at changing that density. You'll get a brief moment to see what I do. And it is a very, very important part of this formula in blending. So when we get there, keep your eyes open and you'll see it firsthand.
We'll hold off for that then. Perhaps the most challenging element is color choice, and that's the key to determining the success of a blend. Lee, would you describe your approach to a few more examples?
Again, when we get into color, color is so important. When we look at these two examples, these two birds, the first thing that hits you is that warm transition of the red to the orange to the yellow. Now, we're staying in the group of analogous colors. I prefer to call them color families. And what is beautiful is that your thread chart with Madeira is set up exactly in those families. So if you're looking for a yellow that will blend beautifully with the orange and make that transition into the red, you'll look at the yellow on the thread chart, find a yellow that has orange close to it, and you'll know there's just a little bit of orange in it. With that yellow-orange, you're going to make a beautiful transition into your orange. And then when you pick your red, it shouldn't be the pure red. The red that you pick should also be in that same family and should have just a little bit of orange. This will give you the best results. So the challenge in picking those colors is minimized by going to your thread chart itself and choosing the cones of thread there.
Thank you. Let's take a look at a few more examples of Lee's work. With these fish, we've got marlin, tarpon, and dolphin.
If you look at the marlin, which is the one on the left-hand side, you'll notice how much he glistens. Again, this is the choice of colors. The fact that we're going from somewhat of a deeper contrast around the edge to the very warm center that appears to come toward you. We're also using a longer stitch to reflect the light, and this gives you that real shine. Madeira's thread, of course, allows you to do just that, unless you get into the more matte finishes of their thread. But if you're using either your rayon or your poly, you can get this look by lengthening the stitch in this fill pattern. If you look at the dolphin, which is in the center, again, we've got colors that are very close to each other on the color wheel, and you'll see how easily they blend. The yellow here that we're using has a little bit of green in it, and it makes it easy to blend into the blues and greens. Your green that you're using is a warm shade of green, has a little bit of yellow in it. And then your blue, even though it's a dark blue, it's a dark turquoise. So it, again, has just a little bit of that green shade that makes the transition from color to color smooth and look natural. When you look at the marlin, you'll see how we've made colors come through. The light density fill that we're using is beautiful in the fact that you are not restricted to the heavy fill that blocks out color. Everything that you put underneath that fill will show through. So this is how you get your shading, how you get the dimension of color. And using, again, the warm colors in the center of this fish makes that fish appear to come forward and intensifies that shading and shape.
Thank you. Each thread type has its own unique reaction to or reflection of light. Rayon has a natural luster, polyneon has a distinct shine, frosted matte and vermilion have no light play and no shine, while metallics have a high degree of reflection. Lee's thread of choice here is classic rayon. In her buffalo, the play of thread color and light source add realism to the animal. Lee, some comments, please?
In this case, I did not use that longer stitch. You can see that I relied on color purely to give you that brightness and give you that three-dimensional look. Had I used a longer stitch, this buffalo would look shiny, and in fact he has a kind of scruffy matte finish. This would be a beautiful place to use one of your matte threads and select the colors so that you get something that truly shines through the color itself, not through the gloss of the thread.
Thank you. Sometimes special effects can be achieved through the combining of general purpose and metallic embroidery threads. Here, the goldfish is truly gold and seems to shimmer through the combination of classic rayon, super twist, and FS, or smooth metallic. The stitch pattern chosen adds to the effect of scales and gills on the side. And the green dragon becomes animated through the blending of Polyneon 40 and FS 45, another smooth metallic. The reflective nature of the metallic threads works to blend and give depth to the wings and scales. For some
There's one
shops,
thing.
sorry?
One thing I want to add there on your metallics.
Yeah?
Going back to this, one of the things that we found is really effective is taking that light density fill that you use for your blending and making that the last layer that you put on your fish. The metallic over your other colors can be very transparent, and what will happen is where there is a stitch, the light is reflected, and for every needle penetration the light is pulled in. So it's a beautiful way to easily create scales on your fish without any effort.
Thank you. Sometimes special effects can be achieved through the combining of general purpose and metallic embroidery threads. Oh, sorry, wrong one. For some shops, digitizing ability or budget or time constraints may pose problems. Depending on the design that has been chosen, sometimes an ombre or multicolored thread will get you closer to a designer look or a shaded effect. Here are several examples where a design that includes elements of nature, such as leaves, feathers, flowers, which vary and sometimes appear to be one of a kind, can be accomplished in classic rayon or Polyneon number 40. The very stylized fall leaves were done with classic rayon ombre 40, each leaf stitched in a single thread that moves from shade to shade. The play of light is all done with one thread each, which blends in and out of dark and light. The three feathers were done in Polyneon multicolor number 40, all one thread. Each feather seems to be related due to the repetitive nature of the thread, but each is also unique in its own way. Again, random patterns in nature, flower petals, greenery, corn kernels, all lend themselves beautifully to the use of ombre and multi-threads. Here, the corn, flowers, and leaves are all done in classic rayon ombre number 40. These ponies were done in a few of the new multicolors of Polyneon. They're very subtle in the neutrals, as you can see. Since this design lends itself to being random, a different multicolor shows more contrast as it stitches in and out of complementary colors, which you can see in the insert. Other times, density alone can produce shading. You can see this in Lee's boxer, where she uses only one color to achieve detail, shading, and dimension. Lee?
If you look at this boxer, it's really evident where we've used one layer of the thread or one layer of that fill. It's very light density. You can actually see between it. We've actually used the background as part of this particular piece, but notice where it is very heavily stitched and how the density increases, and also how the intensity of color with that density increases. This is what we do in creating these blends. You can do it as easily with one color as you can by introducing several colors. In this case, for simplicity and to keep our stitch count down, we stayed with one color, all going horizontally to get the most out of that color, and each one building on top of itself in order to give you the musculature and the definition and form that you see here.
Thank you. At this point, we'd like to revisit the tiger that attracted everyone's attention from the original invitation that went out for this webinar. Lee was able to create a video which details the steps that she went through to bring her tiger to life. Lee, would you please walk us through the stitch out which brings your tiger from good to great? And I know we're struggling a little bit with audio here, so we're hopeful that we will be able to switch from our slideshow to a video, and then everybody will be able to see that. So let's hold on just one sec. And here is our tiger. Lee?
What we're looking at is a fully stitched tiger, and what we're going to do is take it color by color and then run it and see what happens. Bringing up just the first color, which is white, hiding everything else, and changing my background to something dark enough so that I can see this. You will see the buildup of color. The tiger itself, in just that first layer, or that first color, is taking shape. Notice the intensity of color within this first color or first shade of white. I'm leaving room to add more colors, but I'm also building dimension and form by layering the color. Now you're seeing this stitch out in this light density fill that we talk about. One layer only. Now we're coming back in, building up the layers by going over parts of it more than once, leaving other parts free to accept other colors. And again, you can see this animal start to take shape. And where that second layer comes in, you see much more depth of color. And here, you'll see a second layer. And then, in fact, parts that have a third layer and even a fourth layer. Now, obviously, that white is going to be very white. And the rest of it is going to be waiting for additional white or else other colors on top of it. The next color that you're going to see is one of our oranges. We'll open this up and show it. And you see how it sits on top of that white, and the white gives it some depth of color. Also, as we get in here and look at it closely, you'll see where areas were left open between the white, and the orange goes into those areas and ends up getting a different shade of color, whereas where that orange is going over the white, it has another shade completely. We'll add the orange that goes on his right paw, which is a little further from the light and a little darker, and then our brown, which I'm going to turn to black so that it looks more realistic instead of that shade of brown. And you can see the animal starting to take life. Notice how there was some black across his nose, and now we're adding orange. That black will make that nose, that part of the nose, recede. So what we are doing as we add colors, we're adding detail, we're adding form. Now here we're going to add white again, this time on top of some of the color we already have, and the color will bleed through and it will look very natural. Again, another orange comes in. Then we're going to add another shade of orange, do his nose. Another layer of the orange for highlights, then the final black for detail, and you can see now he looks like the tiger, and the final white that gives him life, that bright white in his eyes and his whiskers. Here we're getting away from that tatami or fill stitch, and we're going into our satin stitch. You'll see the satin stitch is very narrow, And the way it is set up, we have the running stitch coming down and then a column or satin stitch going back up. If you notice the angle of that column stitch, it is more of a steel stitch, a little longer stitch, more gloss. Over here, on this side of the whiskers, you'll see where we left the running stitch open. And even when we move the running stitch over on top of itself, you will still see those needle penetrations and it will not look natural. The only way this whisker is going to look glossy and natural is to take that column stitch that we're working with, which is low density, and we're going to bring it down and cover up that running stitch. This gives you a beautiful finish. You don't see the needle penetrations that were left by the running stitch any longer, and when it comes up on the animal itself, it looks natural and runs beautifully. Now, you asked how we did the low density fill, and we start with our regular fill, not our fusion fill. And I'm just doing a small image here, not so round, but a circle, and I will bring it up to full density. I want it to go horizontally, as I said before. I'm going to change my spacing or density, and you can see now it's a transparent fill. If we come in close, you can see the black showing through. This is what we're looking for. And of course, I have to clean it up a little bit. But it's a very simple process to lighten that density and change it so that you can accept more than one color, and that, so that you can have your stitches blend. We'll delete that and go back to the tiger. And if I take a section of that tiger, move it over, and we come in close, you'll see that same pattern you saw in that white circle. It's that same light density fill. We don't change our densities as we go through this. We just change the number of layers. And that's as simple as it is for blending. Now there are some other secrets, but when we get right down to it, it is the direction of the stitch, how close those stitches are together, the color selection, are all the key factors here.
Lee, one question that came in while you were talking, is there a limit to how many layers that can be put on top of one another when you're producing the shading with the thread?
I like to keep it to 3. But you're going to find that this layering is so forgiving that you can add 4 and 5 and even 6 layers. You'll also be able to put your detail on top of it. What is happening here is that as those stitches are laid down gently and the needle finds that path of least resistance, you are going to end up with a very subtle area for a fill, something that moves with the fabric, which is the ideal thing, and something that does not pull in or push out, which is huge. So your layering and learning how to layer your design is a multi-purpose thing. It will give you the ability to introduce more than one color, 5 colors if you like, but it will also allow you to create a design that runs well with no thread breaks and at the same time lies nicely on that garment and looks like it belongs there. So no more cardboard.
Lee, another question that came in is what software was used in the video that you created for the tiger?
Do we have someone from Wilcom on the line?
That's where the question came from.
Is that right? It is. We are using the Wilcom software, which is the software that I sell, and I truly believe has so much to it that it makes digitizing easy.
Okay. Another question is, how big is the tiger? I know that I've seen him embroidered on the back of your shirt at trade shows in a very jungle-looking kind of Tommy Bahama shirt atmosphere, and he looks pretty large. What size is he?
This tiger is scaled. We have him available in about 5 different sizes. Again, this layering allows you to scale up and down as much as you like. So in this case, this one is about a 7-inch tiger, but you can bring this down to left chest if you like. When you filter out the stitches, you're going to find, again, there's no distortion. And again, the beauty of this technique is that you're not getting that pulling. If you noticed, as the tiger went down, there was no underlay. Now the underlay is actually formed by the stitches themselves as they build up. And what you're going to find is by putting those stitches in as gently and as softly as you are here, that you don't get that pulling. And your need for underlay, it becomes minimal. And those are the 2 factors that you need to address when you scale up and down.
Lee, is the tiger all 40-weight thread? And question is, what needle size was used to produce it?
Just the conventional 40-weight thread, conventional needle, nothing special. When we create designs, we create them to go into our library of designs, and we can't be there telling you what size thread and what size needle to use. So when we do this, we want it to run easily for everybody and not to have too many things to guess about.
Can you remember how many hours it took you to digitize the tiger?
Well, let me see. Madeira sent this to me and said I needed it yesterday. This one probably took about 5 hours. This was a little more complicated. You'll see that there's more colors in it than I normally will use because I rely so much on blends. But I was trying to get the full spectrum of the colors, the orange shades that Madeira had. So the challenge was to introduce more colors than I was used to, and that took a little longer.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Someone asks if digitizing was manual or only partially manual?
This is all manual.
All manual, okay.
All manual. And I do have step-by-step instructions on doing this technique as videos. It's something that some of you may want to think about. But it is manual. If we go with the automatic, the tiger that you see on the left-hand side where it's vector art, you can do that automatically. You cannot do this type of blending automatically.
One question was, since this was not digitized from the center out, how did you avoid puckering?
Again, the light layers allow you to lay these stitches down in such a way that they are never pulling. If you think about a light density underlay that you put down before, it spreads that fabric out and holds it in place. It doesn't pull it in. So when we're looking at the tiger here, each one of these layers is done in something that would be as light as an underlay. You get no pulling, you get no puckering. And you can take these same designs and run them on a cap, even though they're not digitized center out.
Do you remember how many stitches are in the tiger?
I don't remember.
We'll be able to look that up.
I can look it up.
No, that's okay. We'll do it.
Okay. Again, this is going to vary as to the size. And as we go up, it's going to have more stitches, and as we come down, it will have less.
Okay. One of our attendees is writing in 57,000. Does that sound right? She remembers seeing that from one of our promotions, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
This was the promotion when we were looking at Madeira's shades of orange.
Right.
And you could, at that point, you could get all of the orange cones that make up this design, plus the design itself for a very nice price.
Right. I'm going to remind everyone that if your question has not been answered, we have a collection of all the questions that you've written in. We are going to answer them. If it's a Madeira question, we'll be able to answer it. If we need to go back to Lee to answer a question, we'll do that. So if we have not taken the time to answer your questions, please be patient and you will get them. We're going to take a look now at a summary page. Lee covered this in her discussion, but to summarize, successful color blending will depend on your understanding of color and your ability to control it. Remember the 4 elements to consider when color blending that we mentioned: the stitch distance, the stitch direction, the color choice, and the thread type.
I'd like to say one thing here. If we look at that stitch direction and think of that as being in layers, if at any point you're going at a different direction, every single layer should go at the same direction. So if you were to start with a 45-degree angle that you see there, and then come back in with the horizontal on top, that horizontal layer would stand up and would not actually blend. So whenever you are in a position, say you have a leaf and you want one side of the leaf to catch the light one way and the other to catch it another, you'll work with 2 different angles converging in the center. And when you do that, each layer, adding each color, will go at the same angle as the underlying color.
Thank you, Lee, for pointing that out. That stitch direction, stitch out that we are showing, that was done in one of the new denim multicolor polyneon colors that's now available. And it was chosen, obviously, to show very clearly where the direction of the stitches was going in that 4 different directions in the one circle. All right. We'd like to thank everyone who attended. We appreciate the time that you spent with us today. You'll see contact information here for Lee and for some of her in-depth training sessions. Also, we'd like to thank you with an offer to save 10% on your next order, plus a complete set of the questions that came through this hour with answers, and a link to the recorded webinar will be going out to all of you who registered. Watch for this email before the week is over. It usually takes us maybe a little bit more than a day to put it all together. It will be emailed out to you using the email that you registered, that you gave to us when you registered for the webinar. Again, thank you for spending the time with us. Sean, thank you for the information on color that you shared. Lee, thank you for bringing your tiger to life right before our eyes. And to the participants and attendees, thank you again for your interest and for your time.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I know how dear everybody's time is, and I appreciate you taking the time to tune in and watch this.